This is Radio Brockley.
Hello and welcome to Brockley News, Radio Brockley's weekly show, keeping you up to date with all you need to know about what's happening in and around the hospital. I'm Alan Joyce, and coming up tonight I'm joined by one of our very own members, Molly Townson, who will be telling us about her incredible 10-week placement in Ghana with the International Citizen Service. She'll be telling us about how she got involved and some of the amazing stories from her work over there over the next half an hour. Then at 7:30, your chance to win some Radio Brockley goodies without leaving your bed on Bedside Bingo with David Rauch. Good luck if you're playing along. And at 8 o'clock tonight, it's all your favourite tunes on the Sunday Request Show with Keith Reeve. So stay tuned to London's official #1 hospital radio station, London's longest running hospital radio station, Radio Brockley. Well, I'm joined now by one of our very own members, award-winning Molly Townson, who has recently returned from an amazing 10-week trip to Ghana with the International Citizen Service, and she's here to tell us all about it. Hi, Molly.
Hi, Alan. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Thank you for coming down and talking to us about this. So how did this whole opportunity of going to Ghana with the International Citizen Service, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. How did that all come about?
Well, I decided I wanted to have a gap year before I went on to university because my course in particular is 5 or 6 years, so it's a very long one, and I thought after I've graduated as a doctor, I might not have as much time as I'd like to travel. So I applied for deferred entry to university so I could take a year out and do some travelling, and I didn't really know where to begin. I had a vague idea that I'd like to travel to South America, but I didn't have anyone to travel with because most of my friends went straight to university. So I started working in autumn, and then I heard about ICS, International Citizen Service it stands for, through a friend who just had a gap year. And International Citizen Service is a government-funded programme where 18 to 25-year-olds can go to less developed countries and help out there for 3 months on various different projects that might be suited to their needs. And I thought, I wonder where they go. So I looked up the different destinations. International Citizen Service is a programme, but it's run by many different charities. And the different charities might specialise in different areas such as sanitation, education, healthcare. And I saw that International Service went to Bolivia and they had a programme that was specifically with children. So I thought, I like the sound of Bolivia, it's in South America, I'll apply to them. And I went for it was quite a rigorous application process. You had to write something quite similar to a personal statement for getting into university. And then after the personal statement bit, there was a day-long interview, which involved like a team interview, a partner interview, one-on-one interviews, and like teamwork where you had to build. I remember we had to build giraffes out of newspaper because they were assessing our teamwork skills. Yeah. And then a week later I heard back from them and they said, well done, you're through. You're going to Ghana. And I was so shocked because I knew nothing about Ghana, and I had my heart set on going to Bolivia, and I'd been learning Spanish specifically so that I could go to Bolivia.
So did you know when you applied, when you did all these series of interviews, you knew there was a possibility that they might just turn around and say, okay, we're going to send you somewhere completely different to where you've been expecting?
There was a small possibility, but they said, we always listen to what you say, and we want to listen to your preferences and really take them into account where you want to work and what in particular you want to do. And when I had my interview, they asked me the direct question, where would you like to go to the most? And I said Bolivia.
And you were quite definite on that. So I mean, they knew that you really wanted to go to Bolivia.
Yeah, I was certain. And the person who was conducting the interview sounded very positive about the idea of me going to Bolivia too, so I assumed I would be. So when I got the call saying I was going to Ghana, I was quite shocked, and then for the next 2 days I wasn't sure if I would take it, but then I thought, no, this is a brilliant opportunity. I don't know anything about Ghana, so it would be really nice to go there, actually.
So having been told that you were going to go to Ghana, how much time then did you have to prepare? And I gather as well you had to raise quite a considerable amount of money to be able to go out there in the first place. Yeah,
I applied quite late, so I had a couple of months before I was actually going. I had to fundraise £1,500 in that time before I left.
That's a lot of money to raise in a short amount of time, isn't it?
Yeah,
that is no mean feat. Wow, that's a project in itself.
Definitely. I think I learned a lot through that. So the way I decided to do it, the main way I managed to fundraise all of that money was through doing a sponsored swim. I swum 10k, which is the equivalent to running a marathon in swimming terms and swimming distances.
It's a long way, yeah.
10k. It was all in one day at this one swimming pool, and I watched so many people go, enter the swimming pool, leave after an hour. They'd done their session, and I was so jealous of them because I was going back and forth. I had to do 333 lengths it was of this pool.
Wow.
So it took just over 5 hours, but I was glad at the end of it.
What an achievement.
Thank you.
I mean, were you a fairly strong swimmer before? I'm assuming you were.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed swimming.
Yeah.
I've never done it in a competitive way, but I used to swim a lot before school because I liked it, and I thought actually the reason why I did a swimming marathon as opposed to a running marathon was just because I dislike running so much. Other people would prefer to do that, but no, it had to be swimming for me because it doesn't make me shiver in the same way as the idea of running one.
And how much did you raise then from the swimming?
In the end, I probably got about £1,300 from the swimming, and then I brought it up to 1,600 in the end, through teaching the piano and putting money towards teaching, towards the fundraising from teaching the piano. So that was what brought it up in the end.
Wow, so you achieved your goal. You were set to go to Ghana.
Yes.
Explain a little bit more about how much you knew before you went out to Ghana. So did you know what your role was going to be and who you would be working with when you went out there?
I knew very little. Very, very little. Before we went away to Ghana, we met the other volunteers who I'd be going with. Like maybe 2 or 3 weeks before, we had a training weekend where we all thought we'd find out much more about our projects and what it would be like to be there, what our daily routine would be. But when we arrived, we actually found out very little, and they did more of the team building exercises, such as the building a giraffe out of newspaper, more along those lines. And it was nice to meet our team, and at the very end of the weekend, they told us what our project would be. Unfortunately, mine was the one on healthcare and education, which I was happy with. But we didn't know what our accommodation would be like, what our families would be like, anything about that we were all really hoping for, just sort of for peace of mind. And in fact, we didn't even know our flight details until a week before. We knew when we were leaving, which day, but not what time.
So you knew some of the team that you're going to be flying out with. Explain a little bit more how that works in terms of the team and how many people there were going over with you.
So the cohort was about 24 people from the UK, but for every volunteer from the UK, there is also a counterpart Ghanaian volunteer. So in total, we had about 50 volunteers in my cohort who would be working in Ghana for 3 months on the various projects. There are a total of 6 projects, 4 of them in one town called Tamale, which was where I was based, and then one in a very, very rural village called Sandama, and then another in Bulga, which is also another town, but the group who were in Bulga was only 3 small, so very, very tiny.
Yeah, so it's quite important that you all got along quite well. I mean, did you instantly gel with the people you were going with?
When I met them, in fact, we didn't have much time to, because they told us sort of like within an hour of us going who we would be working with. So we didn't have a chance to gel, actually. And we were all really quite apprehensive before we left, thinking, I don't know who I'm going with at all. I was really nervous. But when a small number of you are put in a place that you don't know at all well and you don't really know what you're doing, it doesn't take long to get to know each other really well. So by the end of the first week, everyone knew like the personalities of the other people very quickly. So
tell us about that feeling. You got on the plane to leave the UK to go out to Ghana. How did you feel at that moment?
Well, my family had taken me to the airport, all of my family, which was probably a really big mistake because I had to say goodbye to them there and then in front of the other volunteers. I just burst into tears because I was going to miss them so much, and I was very nervous about going. But once I was on the plane, and the other volunteers were so helpful and comforting, that I was just really excited to get out there. Even though I didn't know what I was about to be doing at all. I had no comprehension.
So what were your first memories when you touched down in Ghana and you saw your conditions and the accommodation and everything? How did you feel at that point?
Sleepy, I remember, because we arrived in the very early morning and they took us into this training hall straight away, and we just wanted to sleep. But we had to stay up all day, and the first week was training. So we didn't really have an idea of what it was going to be like working each day, because we spent the first 5 days just in this training centre orientating ourselves with what we were about to do. But
and were you sleeping there as well? You weren't with your family or your nominated family at that point?
The people in the projects that were not in Tamale, the projects that were further north, they had to sleep there. But I got to meet my family after the second day, and that was lovely, having a base. And I had a wonderful family. My father was the father of a church, the Reverend, and I lived at the mission house with his wife, who was a teacher, and they had 5 children. And I also stayed with another UK volunteer and a Ghanaian counterpart volunteer, so we all got on very well.
Wow, it's quite a big family you were staying with.
A very big family I was living with.
So did you feel quite reassured? I mean, what were the conditions like? What was the house like?
Well, it was very different to at home. On my first night, I was quite scared by the prospect of having a bucket shower. I didn't know what that entailed. I thought you would have a bucket full of water suspended above your head, and they'd put holes at the bottom of the bucket, and like in the same way as we have shower heads here, the water would just stream through the holes. But actually you just get given a bucket and a pail, and that's your water, and you just wash yourself with that, and it's actually really refreshing. But I was so scared to do it for the first time. I just didn't know how I'd go about it. But you save a lot of water, and the water's room temperature, which is like much cooler than the normal showers we'd have here, but it's very refreshing in the heat of Ghana.
Well, I was going to say, the other thing that presumably hit you as soon as you got over there is the change in the temperature. What sort of temperature was it over there? It
was normally above 40 degrees.
Wow.
And it was also very humid, which meant I initially thought I could never get used to it, but actually coming back to the UK after 10 weeks there, I found our weather very strange. So for the first 2 or 3 weeks, it was difficult. And because of the humidity, it meant that there were a lot of mosquitoes, because they like to breed in like the rivers, so they like water. And I also got bitten a lot. I'm one of those people who's prone to bites. So even though I slept under a mosquito net, I'd wake up in the morning and I still had like 10 bites on my ankles. Like, I probably was trapping the mosquitoes under my mosquito net.
Yeah.
But I got lots of bites while I was there too, and that's using lots of insect repellent as well.
Tell us a bit more about the family you were staying with. Did they all speak English? Was that fairly straightforward?
Yes. English is the language of Ghana, but because Ghana used to be made up of lots of smaller countries before it all formed together, there are lots of other languages spoken in Ghana as well. So I was fortunate that my family, they had very good education and could speak good English, but there was a language barrier that was really apparent when we were working in the field and going to different communities, but within my family it wasn't a problem.
Well, we'll hear more in just a few moments' time. This is Brockley News here on Radio Brockley. Don't forget, still to come this evening, we have Bedside Bingo, your chance to win some Radio Brockley goodies without leaving your bed. It starts in just over 15 minutes' time with David Rauch calling out the numbers. And then at 8 o'clock tonight, it's an hour of your favourite tunes on the Sunday Request Show. Let's hear part 2 of Molly's story, though. So let's go about sort of 2 or 3 weeks into the project. What roles were you doing in those first 2 to 3 weeks?
In those first few weeks, we were planning a lot of what we were going to be doing in the later weeks, and we were planning the hands-on activities, but they required quite a lot of planning. So it was 9 till 5. No, actually, I lie. It was 9 till 3. It wasn't too long. They have a shorter working day in Ghana because of the weather. 9 till 3 we were working, and we planned sensitizations, which is when you go into community. You might put them into demographic groups and speak to them about things specific to the demographic group. And my project was on sexual health, so we would speak to the teenage boys, the teenage girls, the adult men and women about different things, and that required a lot of planning. And we also planned to be on 3 different radio stations.
I mean, this is a dream thing for you, really, with the experience that you've got over there. Presumably they all look to you as sort of, the radio expert. So tell us a bit more about what happened with that.
Well, we wanted to do a sort of media campaign so that we could reach more people than just the people in the communities we were going to. So we thought radio would be a good way to do that, because some of the stations we were on reached very rural communities. They had a really good spread. So I approached 3 radio stations. Unfortunately, they were 3 really popular stations. I was working in the north of Ghana, and 2 of them were local ones that just broadcasted to the north. But one of them was broadcasting to the whole of Ghana, which was really cool. Yeah. So we secured a 45-minute show on 2 of them and an hour show on another.
You got your own show to the whole of Ghana?
Yeah, that's mad. I don't know how we did it, really, looking back on it. But yes, it was. We spoke for about 45 minutes on our Safe Choices project. The aim of the Safe Choices project was to reduce teenage pregnancies in different communities so that more young women would be able to stay in school. So that was our main target, talking to young girls. And so we managed to do that through the radio, and we would discuss, for example, different contraceptive methods, consent. It was quite scary. A lot of people didn't realise that they had the right to refuse sex, we discovered. And then we had a phone-in at the end of our radio show where people could ask us any questions they had.
I'm really intrigued to know what sort of feedback you got from that. Did you find that you got a lot of positive feedback from people listening? Yeah, they really enjoyed the show, and it was quite a fresh topic, because it's a taboo subject here, but it's even more taboo over there. I haven't really asked you about what you did sort of when you weren't working during the weekends and stuff, because presumably you had time to go out and have fun. I mean, what did you do for your nightlife or whatever, or for your day life during the weekends? So at the weekends, we got very used to travelling long distances by these vehicles called Tro Trains, which are similar to, it's like a cross between a minivan and a coach, but they're packed full. If you can imagine an aisle in a coach, they would put plastic chairs down the aisle. So they weren't very stable, but people would sit on those. And if you had a row of 3 or 4 seats, say, you'd have maybe 5 or 6 people sitting on those. So it was really cramped, and you'd travel for like 5-6 hours just like that. So cramped and presumably very hot as well. So hot, yes. We didn't have much air conditioning. No. That was a big luxury, but it was worth it for the places we went to. One of the first trips was to a place called Mole National Park. Whenever I said I'd been, all the Ghanaians would laugh because they thought Mole sounded really similar to Molly, and they thought my name was funny. Whenever I said Molly, they're like, "Oh, just like the national park." Really? But we went on safari. That joke got really tired. I can imagine. Yeah. For me, anyway. We went on safari there, and it was brilliant. We saw lots and lots of elephants. We got very close to the elephants. Crocodiles. There was a big lake full of crocodiles, which actually the crocodiles and the elephants would both use. Now, I have to say at this point, there is a picture that appeared on Facebook of you literally standing right next to a crocodile. I mean, are you mad or what? Or was it... I'm assuming it was quite safe, but... Yeah, I don't know how safe it was, really, because that was when I visited a place called Bolgatanga, which was where some of the other volunteers were, and they were close to these sacred ponds where the crocodiles would live, and the crocodiles were viewed as holy because they didn't tend to eat people. So that's where the photo comes from. I love how you say didn't tend to. Still might. I think that was it, because they were very well fed, because you could buy food. As a tourist, you could go and buy food and give it to the crocodiles, and because so many people came along to visit these crocodiles, they were really well fed. And one of the volunteers
is intending to do veterinary medicine at university, and she knew a lot about animals, and she said, I'm sure it's just the fact that they're full, that's why they're tame right now, that's why it's safe. So yeah, there's a photo of me right next to a crocodile. I got the opportunity to lift up his tail, which is extremely heavy, and he was fine with it. But the reason why I thought it probably was quite dangerous was because the people who were supervising us would be like, run as soon as a crocodile sort of changed direction. Yeah. So I don't know how safe it really was.
So they thought you were mad having this photo taken, did they?
Yes, they did.
Oh, dear me. How else did you find the cultural differences between Ghana and the UK? Was there anything else that sort of particularly struck you as being very, very different?
Lots of Ghanaians joke about GMT. It stands for Greenwich Mean Time, and they're also on GMT. But there's a very different sort of different view to timings in Ghana. And let's say you arrange to meet up with your Ghanaian friend at 3 p.m. It probably wouldn't be worth arriving until 4 or 5. That's maybe an exaggeration, but there isn't the same sort of punctuality that
sounds normal. I'm married to someone like that.
that we British people tend to have.
Yeah.
So they would joke that GMT stood for Ghana Man Time.
Right.
So that was one of the major differences. Other than that, I would say I noticed that in the UK, obviously I'm generalising a lot, but there's a sort of a stereotype that we're more reserved than at other places. And I could see that definitely going to Ghana, because it's very normal for someone to just approach you on the street and strike up a conversation with you just because they want to be your friend. They're extremely hospitable and so smiley.
And you said about the hitchhiking being totally normal. So again, it's sort of totally normal just to approach absolute strangers and just ask them for a lift or whatever.
Stick out your hand, you explain that your car or van is broken down, and because I think that's quite common, I'm just like, sure, hop in, and then they'll hopefully take you where you need to go.
So did you feel safe there most of the time, would you say?
Yes, I did. I really did. Obviously there's crime wherever you go, and I think as long as you sort of watch out and you're careful, it will be okay. I always felt very safe because the people I was with were so friendly. My family made me feel so at home that I got used to the way of life quite quickly.
But I mean, you mentioned crime, and you actually were on the receiving end of that, weren't you? It
was around the halfway point when I went out one night in the evening, and it was quite dark, and I brought out my purse. I didn't bring out my bag because I didn't want to have like too much heavy stuff. I had my purse and my phone, and someone just sort of ran past me and grabbed it. So that's why I didn't have a smartphone for a while while I was there, because my phone was taken away from me. But I think that was more to do with the fact that they just saw us as people from the UK. They maybe thought that we were more well off than them. And I think you do get crime wherever you go, so I think I should have just been more careful. Really, because I just had it right in my hands loosely there, just walking in a very busy area at night time. So I think it can be expected anywhere, but it was a bit of a shock for sure, not having a phone and not having any money, but I had some emergency money, so it was all right, really.
Worked out okay in the end. Was it quite difficult then when you reached the end of your 10 weeks? I'm presuming that it was almost as difficult to leave there as it was to sort of leave home in the first place, was it? Yeah,
it was. When I started, for those first few weeks, I couldn't wait to get home, but by the final few weeks, they were going by so rapidly. The last 3 weeks felt like 1 week wrapped into one. It went so quickly, and the friendships I made, I just didn't want to leave them behind. So especially my family, they feel like an extension of my family, and we're still in contact now. I didn't want to leave because I was enjoying my project so much. I'd got so used to the weather that I really enjoyed the fact that it was so warm. It's just there's a very relaxed vibe over there, and I was sorry to say goodbye to it.
And not only that, your family, but other people in the project you must have become quite close to during that time.
Yes, my team especially were really close, and we would meet up, 3 or 4 nights in the week, and it was a very sociable 10 weeks. We spent so much time together, and we're actually meeting up this weekend for a reunion because, yes, we miss it.
Yeah, I bet. And it must be a big adjustment for you all to come back over again.
It was weird. I remember having my first shower back here and I thought, this is way too powerful. I wanted to have a bucket to collect the water and then just use the bucket because I knew it was so much more, better for the environment.
So what would you say is the main thing you'll take away from the whole experience?
Well, I didn't know anything really about international development before I went on this. And I know so much more now. I know that it requires a lot of planning. It's a really slow process, but something that we need to get into. And I think it's important that we help each other out, different countries. People say that, why don't you start at home? There's so much you can do here. But I don't think so. I mean, there's no reason why I shouldn't do it elsewhere as well. And I found I learned a lot about sustainable development because people talk about volunteerism. This definitely wasn't it. It was a grassroots project where we only worked in places where they specifically asked for international citizen services help. So we knew what we were doing was definitely worthwhile. It wasn't one of those things where we could leave the country and they wouldn't be able to sustain themselves with a particular project we were working on. So it's something that I'd like to sort of keep I don't know the phrase when you keep a hand in. I don't know. I want to do more with in international development in the future. Now. And
you think you'll keep in contact with this family that you stayed with? Do you think you'll keep in contact with them long term?
I definitely think so. In my medicine degree, in the final year, you have to do elective where you go away for a term to a different country and work in a hospital there. And I'm hoping I can go back to Ghana.
Well, that was going to be my next question. I mean, now, you had your reservations about Ghana, obviously, before you went, but would you go back now?
I would love to, yes. Mainly to see my family again.
I think that's so amazing how you can say that, my family. That is such a powerful thing to say, isn't it?
It really is. They do. As I said before, they are an extension of my family. It feels like I called them my mum and dad while I was there. That was normal, even though they're just your host mum and dad. Like within a week, they were just mum, dad. So no, it was lovely.
Incredible. What would you say to anyone thinking of doing a similar project who is starting from scratch? Think back to where you were a year ago. Yeah. Quite a scary prospect. What sort of advice would you give them?
It's definitely worth thinking about because I know it seems really daunting at first, but it's a life-changing experience and it's so good to get into a completely different culture and not just observe it but live in it for a whole 3 months. You meet so many new people who will become your friends. You can form friendships for life through it and you'll know that you're doing something that is definitely worthwhile. So I think it's something to consider. Through ICS, they cover lots of different areas such as education, health, sanitation, infrastructure. So there's something to suit everyone and they go to many different countries. I just can't promise you that you will end up going to the country you wanted to go to.
So if anyone wants to find out more about the ICS or International Citizen Service, how do they go about doing it?
You can look up International Citizen Service because there are many different charities who deliver their projects and they'll have their various different websites and you can flick through them and decide which charity is best suited to you and then apply, I say.
Go for it. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I think what you've done is absolutely incredible. You're an inspiration to all of us here at Radio Brockley and we're very proud of the work you've done. So well done you. Thanks, Molly, for joining.
It was a fabulous experience. Thank you.
Just goes to show, you see, not only do our members here at Radio Brockley do some fantastic voluntary work here, but many of them do some fantastic work elsewhere as well. And a big well done to Molly for all of her work in Ghana there. Don't forget, if you want to listen to that again, plus any of our previous interviews on Brockley News, you can do by following the links from our website. Go to radiobrockley.org, follow the links to our YouTube site. Plus, you can tune into Brockley News Extra 5 days a week at midday for another chance to hear some of our recent interviews, plus Monday nights at 8 o'clock as well, when tomorrow you'll get another chance to hear an extended version of our interview with writer and traveller Melanie Gow. If there's anything else happening here in the hospital that you want to find out more about, you can call us on extension 5483 and we'll try and cover it on future editions of Brockley News. Still to come then this evening on Radio Brockley, Bedside Bingo's up next. Your chance to win some Radio Brockley goodies with David Rauch. Good luck if you're playing along. And then at 8 o'clock tonight, it's all your favourite tunes on the Sunday Request Show with Keith Reeve. Brockley News returns at the same time next week when we'll be hearing from the Disability Foundation. From me, Alan Joyce, good night.